Welcome to the Cloud Council. This is the destination for IT business leaders to come and learn from real life stories of people who have been there and they've done that. And it is Michael Johnson, the global superstar sprinter, who is joining us today. Michael, thanks again for joining us. For an absolute winner, we're going to start with something you're not at all familiar with, which is losing. You were unbeaten for 7 years. And it's fascinating to think, given we know you for pure success, you must have had setbacks and got yourself back from them. And maybe the earliest one to talk about is 1992. You're set for the Barcelona Olympics and something struck you down. Can you take us back there?
Yeah, I mean, by 1992 was my first Olympics. I was 2 years into my professional career, unbeaten, defending world champion at that point, going into that games, a heavy favorite to win the gold medal in the 200 meters in Barcelona. And just before the games, got a bout of food poisoning. And obviously at that point, you're at just such a high level of fitness that any small thing just sort of, can knock you off of that. And so ultimately, I realized how much it had affected me in my preliminary round of the 200 meters, which normally, that's a race where, I can win it, running at sort of 50 to 60% of effort. And I was struggling from the very beginning, from the moment the gun went off. I did win that race, but I knew something was wrong. It just didn't feel right. And I knew exactly what it was at that moment. So I advanced to the quarterfinals. I knew that there was a good chance I wouldn't advance out of the quarterfinals into the semifinals, let alone the finals, and I didn't. And yeah, it was the biggest disappointment of my career, and to date, biggest disappointment of my life. In terms of trying to achieve something. And ultimately, I won a gold medal at that games in the 4x400 meter relay, but that wasn't what I was there for, and there was no consolation at the time. Very proud of that medal now, but at the time, that was no consolation. It wasn't what I was there for, and yeah, huge disappointment. And it is that sort of moment in a sports career where you hear about athletes going into a slump and not being able to get themselves out. This is the sort of thing that can put you in a slump. And it's all about the decisions you make, who's around you at that moment, and the decisions you make next that will determine whether you're able to overcome it or whether you ultimately go into a slump.
But to do that, one needs to almost remove any emotion. Surely you have to look at it strictly logically. This happened. Why did it happen? The impact was that. In order to, did you have to somehow package and wrap up that disappointment and then move on, or did it stay with you to drive you forward? How do you deal with a setback like that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. And, I think I've certainly learned throughout my life that, sort of trying to be unemotional and ignore the emotions in these sorts of things isn't healthy either. And that doesn't actually help. You can't ignore those things. You have to deal with it. I was very disappointed. I was devastated. And as an Olympic athlete, when you get into the sport, any Olympic sport, that you may only get one opportunity to ever get to an Olympic Games. It only takes place every 4 years, and that's what makes it so special. With all due respect to NFL, which I love, and Premier League and basketball and all of those kind of sports, you don't win the championship this year, you can try again next year. You don't win Wimbledon this year, try again next year. There is no next year with the Olympics. It's 4 years from now. Some careers aren't even 4 years in Olympic sports. So that you may never get another chance. So that just gives you the sort of the gravity of the situation, that I am the best, and I was ready, a week ago. And on the day, I wasn't ready because of no fault of my own. It's not like I didn't train hard enough. It's not like I wasn't mentally, physically prepared. This happened. So, I had to deal with that disappointment, and I did. But yes, and then of course, I think the bigger part of it, and the decision that I made, was to deal with that disappointment, then put it aside emotionally and focus on the things that, that were coming into my mind, which were things like, well, am I as good as I thought I was? Am I as good as everyone? I'm no longer the number one sprinter in the world. I was for the last 2 years. Now I'm not. Someone else is. Is that because I'm not as good as I thought I was? Is that because I didn't work as hard? No, it's not because of any of those things. It's because of something that happened to me. Now, could I have controlled that? Should I have done something different? And the answer was ultimately no. There was nothing that I could have done differently. It was just, horrible luck. And but there's gonna be a season next year. There's a championship at stake. And if I do all of the same things I've been doing the last 2 years, I'm going to win that championship and I'm going to be the number one sprinter, because all of the same people that won the medals in Barcelona are the people that I've been beating for the last 2 years. None of them have ever beaten me when I'm healthy and ready to go. So there's no reason for me to believe that I'm not just as good as I was, or that next year I'm not going to still be number one. And so I started to then focus on those goals. And I had always been driven by my goals. And I started to focus on setting some new goals and focus on the future.
And you've talked about personal setbacks and overcoming them individually. And I would like to get to Trevor Moawad shortly, who's a performance coach, but for mental processing rather than for physical. But before we do, in your role as a CEO, when your businesses have hit small bumps in the road, how maybe have you got teams to think positively to get them through those setbacks? Is there a strategy to do that?
Yeah, and it's very similar to what I learned as an athlete. I would start at the beginning of the season with very specific and very serious goals that that I want to achieve. And certainly throughout the season, there are going to be some setbacks. There are going to be some obstacles to overcome. Let's say it's an injury. Now, I've been training and we're pushing every day as hard as we can physically in training, and I can feel myself getting better. And then all of a sudden, hamstring strain. And now, and my doctor's telling me that, that's going to take, 3 weeks to fully heal. So now, as opposed to pushing myself, and pushing the envelope, every day, now I'm in the physical therapy clinic. And literally this happened a couple of times. I'm in the physical therapy clinic with my therapist, and I'm having to lift, doing some weights, and I'm lifting weights. And there's a grandmother over here, in the clinic beside me lifting more weight than I am. That's devastating, but I have to put just as much into that rehab in order to get to my goal, to get back to being able to push physically as hard as I can every day. I have to get back there. And in order to get back there, I've got to do this work. And it's the goal that's motivating me. So it's the same thing with our teams. I keep our teams focused on the goals. And when we have setbacks, that doesn't mean because of this setback that we no longer have the same goal, that we no longer want to accomplish that anymore. We do, and we've got to find a way around it. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the job. But we talk about those things when times are good as well. So that we remind ourselves that this isn't always going to be this way. There are going to be setbacks, and we prepare when times are good for. Yeah, if there's a setback, we're ready for it. And we've got contingency plans, but sometimes things come out of the blue that you didn't expect. And that's when, as the CEO, it's my job to be that leader that can, sort of calm people down, get us reassembled and get us refocused.
For people who are watching who don't know exactly what one of your businesses is, you run an eponymous performance center for athletes around the world who obviously from these times are dialing in as opposed to physically turning up. But there is a physical performance center looking at NFL players. I know some rugby players come over there to improve their technique of sprinting. But the mindset, that positive mindset, the mental coaching, you have a fantastic guy called Trevor Moawad on your team. What kind of techniques that maybe that he uses can a chief exec or a senior executive learn from or bring to their own business life?
Yeah, I think Trevor is quite unique in the sports world, and I think people have caught on, teams and athletes have caught on, but we spend a lot of time in the sport world focused on the physical training, and for a long time the idea in sports was, and in life I believe that is that when something goes wrong, then I need to get help, and I always felt that physical preparation, mental preparation are all important to training, to performance. So I want to be the best I can be in all of those areas. So there was never anything wrong that made me, need to focus on my mental preparation. I wanted to be as good as I could be from a mental standpoint. And that's what Trevor does. So it's not, sort of, oh, I'm in a slump, an athlete's in a slump, so Trevor's there to help you get out. Athletes want to be mentally prepared, and you're training, you're competing under a tremendous amount of pressure and stress, and you need to be able to deal with that. And every athlete deals with it differently. And Trevor is on our team to help athletes develop that skill. How do you deal with the pressure in a much more efficient and effective way? And Trevor actually does work with CEOs and business as well, who, just like a lot of the coaches that, we work with at Michael Johnson Performance, helping them to better manage their teams, motivate their teams. That's a part of coaching. It's the same thing that, CEOs and managers have to do, motivate the team, assemble a team, get people to, work together and work for a common goal. And there are many different analogies with regard to, sports teams that translate over into, managing a corporate team as well.
So that's interesting to hear about some of the mindset techniques that you used and that Trevor employs. In terms of relating it directly to business, I take a CEO or a CIO, they're having a digital migration, they're having a complete uplift of their system, they're having a huge change, or there's a merger or acquisition and they need to realign a whole bunch of different systems, let's say. What is that individual going to get perhaps from coming from your performance center, other than being able to run faster? What, if anything, if they're not running faster, would they gain or learn?
Yeah, let's take like you said, like a digital migration. So, that's you got to manage that change with a team. People are used to, sort of, operating the way that they used to under the old system. They're comfortable with that. Why do we have to change to this new system? That one person could be our two people, let's say, however many in the organization can become a cancer. Just like a sports team, we have, as a draft every year in the NFL, brought a new guy in. Some of the team believes we shouldn't have brought that guy. We shouldn't have drafted him. Or why are we going to do this? Or why are we changing our scheme, for example, of how we defend or whatever? You've got to manage that. Someone has to manage that, has to get those people on board, has to make sure that the team stays solid. It's the same thing with change management in business. Some people aren't going to like it. You've got to get everybody on the same page. Working as a team, everyone has to be aligned. And so, Trevor's fantastic at helping CEOs understand how to get that team aligned. A lot of it is around how you lead. At Michael Johnson Performance, we provide coach education courses for coaches. We do a lot of different work outside of just training the athletes. We support teams with systems and coach education programs around the world. And so a lot of what we do working with coaches who are coaches of Premier League teams and NFL teams and NBA teams is helping them to get that sort of alignment that ultimately allows that team to win. And the same sort of the same thing applies when it comes to managers and CEOs trying to get that team to win.
So they could learn that at your center. Well, when they're there, I'm sure they're also going to share with you some of their goals and ambitions. And I'd like to wrap up this fantastic run of the Cloud Council with you, Michael, by asking you, you have gone from a sprinter to an Olympic champion to a world record holder, a world champion. You've run businesses. You're a very talented and successful broadcaster, but you're still a relatively young man. What kind of goals have you set yourself from here on? I mean, there must be something you can share with us about what is your new Olympic gold target?
I mentioned earlier, a CEO of two companies. I actually started a new company this year in the middle of a pandemic, a tech startup in the digital fitness space, and our objective is to transform the fitness space where, I've watched that space for years where, having been an athlete and having trained athletes and built a business where we successfully train athletes almost always achieve their their goals with regard to how fit they want to be. An athlete says, I want to be faster, they get faster. They may not score more goals or, score more baskets or win a championship, but if they're trying to get faster, they're trying to get stronger, they're trying to improve their endurance, they get there. In fitness, most people don't achieve their goals. I want to get stronger. I want to increase my stamina. I want to lose weight. Most people, 80% of people do not achieve their goals. That's ridiculous. So we're going to transform fitness. That's my new gold medal, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, I'm sure on behalf of everyone at the Cloud Council, we wish you every success. I am one of that 80%, by the way, so I might need to hit you up for the app or how I download or access this amazing information. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure everyone watching will agree with me and just want to join me in saying thanks again for joining us. And next time, please show us those wonderful gold shoes.
Will do. Thanks.
All the best.